Wow! Tonight, the Southern Tier made me the comeback kid.
State GOP Chairman Nick Langworthy beat Carl Palladino in the primary for New York's 23rd Congressional District last night, and in dramatic fashion. He now moves on to the general election in November.
Right now, we are joined by Nick Langworthy. Nick, congratulations. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me back here on the couch.
So I want to get your overall reactions, your emotions from last night. You know, as we just heard right there, you called yourself the comeback kid. How were you feeling, you know, when you were trailing behind a little bit, and then as we neared midnight, you took the lead? Well,
I mean, from the outset of this campaign, from the moment that we saw the map and that the judge had created for this district, I knew that this was not a Buffalo seat that happened to have the Southern Tier. It's a Southern Tier seat that happens to have Erie County in it. So when I decided to be a candidate, our strategy was based on going and winning over the hearts and minds of the voters in the Southern Tier that didn't have as strong of opinion about Carl or myself. And we had probably a dozen different town hall meetings and campaign stops and meet and greets throughout those Southern Tier counties. You know, we sat, we listened to people, we, you know, did all of the events and the fairs and the festivals and the parades and the things necessary to really get to know the community, and we're really pleased with the results. And yeah, listen, those early numbers that came in, they weren't pretty for our campaign, but we knew that we expected a very good performance in those 6 counties in the Southern Tier where we spent so much of our time and our resources.
And it's not to say that Palladino did not campaign down there. We have a home in Chautauqua County. I see Carl Country signs all over down there. So it's not to say that he was absent, but it does say something about New York's newly drawn 23rd district. It is still deeply rooted in what Tom Reed had run on in that Southern Tier, and clearly that area, Allegheny, Steuben, those counties, they wanted by a large margin you over Palladino. What do you think it was? Was it the more moderate approach to the campaign? Was it Palladino's in his history? What was it?
No, I wouldn't ever classify any of my positions as moderate per se. It's really the difference between myself and my opponent in this race was style. He and I advocate for very similar governmental positions, but it's just that I believe that I was running, and I will continue throughout the course of this election to make it known to the citizens of this district. I intend to be a serious legislator to bring stability and dignity back to the seat in Congress. We have had this revolving door of members of Congress in and out on the Republican side, unfortunately, for, you know, misdeeds in some cases, in other cases, just, you know, changes in position. But it's time that we have someone that is a predictable voice that will stand for what they vote for when they come home and talk about those issues. But, you know, this is the most Republican seat in the state of New York, if not the northeastern United States. The district deserves a stable, conservative Republican leader that will live up to that.
So before you were talking about, you know, your focus, you know, making your presence known in the Southern Tier specifically, what did you think about Palladino's strong lead in Erie County particularly?
He certainly has a long history. He had the resources to get his message out throughout that. I mean, he spent a tremendous amount of campaign money on that. I mean, I certainly couldn't compete, you know, with the personal wealth there. In a track record, in a history when he won the governor's race, and I think a lot of that residual stayed in place. Again, I don't disagree with his policy positions. We just presented very different styles on, I think, the member of Congress that we will be for Western New York. But you know, we're very, you know, focused on this. The primary is now in our rearview mirror. We're looking ahead. We're looking to unify the party and work towards a goal of firing Nancy Pelosi and restoring Republican leadership to the U.S. House of Representatives.
This was a clean campaign, but certainly got down in the mud, particularly as we got into August and the final stretch played out, especially when we see mailers, when we see ads on TV. It was very contentious, without question. How will you go about, what steps will you go about over the next couple of months on your campaign to beat Max Delapia and at the same time reunify this party that, quite frankly, has been fractured at least in 23?
Yeah, we will be talking about the issues that are important to Western New Yorkers and Southern Tier residents. That's what's critically important. I didn't have that larger philosophical differences with my primary opponent. I have major philosophical differences with Max Delapia. And we're going to have that debate and that discussion as this goes on, because I think that is what will make this a clear choice to voters. You know, again, this is a traditional conservative Republican district. He doesn't represent any sort of conservative values. I mean, Max Delapia is comes with the support of Pelosi in that agenda. You know, he's right in the pocket with the Green New Deal crowd, and we will, have that discussion as this race goes on, as we get past Labor Day and beyond. But there's a very clear contrast between where I stand and where Max Delapia stands.
I do want to backtrack just a little bit, because Dave mentioned this, this past campaign being very contentious. Palladino, around the same time that you were giving your speech, he said that him and his camp said that there were statistical irregularities. What do you think about that?
I think that that's already been discussed. It's been reported by the boards of elections. Before we declared victory last night, we triple-checked with every board of elections as to where things were. There was a minor discrepancy on one of the websites on how many districts had performed, but the reality is this was a clear and decisive victory. I'm very proud of the campaign that we ran, and I thank the voters for giving me that nomination and entrusting me to be, your future member of Congress and be the federal representative for Western New York in this seat. We are going to march forward. We're going to unify this party, and we are going to win in November.
Lastly, excuse me, if I could talk a little bit about the announcement today by President Biden. You've said that you want to take on Biden, you want to take on the administration, you want to take on Pelosi, other Democrat leaders. Today they're announcing student loan debt forgiveness, taking $300 billion that was just saved in the Inflation Reduction Act, and now spending it on repaying $10,000 in loans, up to 20, of course. What is your reaction to that, and how will you use that kind of late surge by Democrats here as we approach the midterm to then defeat this administration?
Well, I have a real problem with the federal government, in this whole COVID and post-COVID era. We have taught the next generation of Americans that there is such a thing as a free lunch. Our grandparents didn't teach us that lesson. But unfortunately, that's what Joe Biden wants to push forward. You want people to wipe away any bad decision that you make. If we're going to use student loan debt forgiveness, it should be incentivized towards careers that we actually need workers in. Not, because someone went and got a degree in blanket weaving and they racked up $100,000 in debt. The federal government should not be there to wipe away, foolish decisions. We should incentivize student loan debt only in areas where we need more workers. We have areas in our economy where we're trying to get people to come here from other countries with that education. That shouldn't be the case. We have plenty of Americans that can do these jobs. We should use federal programs to incentivize that. We should not be giving blanket giveaways to people because they made poor decisions and can't afford them.
Well, as we look to November, certainly a lot to look at, a lot to talk about. We look forward to that. Nick Langworthy, congratulations, and thank you again for being here.
Well, let's turn now to your forewarned weather.